Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. My name is Alex Dvorkin, and I'm a managing partner at 4D Capital. We specialize in one-of-a-kind mathematical work that analyzes the stock market in multidimensional space. And when we do that, essentially perfect order emerges. On top of that, we've developed a number of very powerful timing indicators, and when we combine both of them, we can very often predict in both time and price exactly what the overall market or individual stocks will do going forward. And we can typically do it on multiple time frames, whether it's short-term, long-term, doesn't really matter. Now, I personally believe our work is nearly identical to what Jim Simmons was able to accomplish at Renaissance Technologies, if you're familiar with Jim. So today we're going to be looking at one of our fast movers. I'll explain in a second what a fast mover is, but as you've probably figured, it is exactly what it sounds like. It's a stock that moves relatively fast, 50% or more, within a relatively short period of time, 12 months or less. So I'll describe that, or I'll give you a much better understanding of that here in a second. But before I do, our firm essentially specializes in identifying equities that will 2x, 5x, 10x, and do so within a relatively short period of time. And we can typically do it because of our software that has been built on top of our mathematical work. So what we can essentially do, we can scan the entire S&P 500, for example. And what we're looking for very important upcoming bottoms for various stocks. Bottoms are important in this context because we can identify the tops just as well. But as you know, a short side of the trade is much riskier, and your gains are limited. But in this situation, our gains are unlimited because we're able to identify those exact bottoms, and then from those bottoms we're able to identify exactly how far the stock will go in terms of its price appreciation, and then we also know how long it's going to take. So we can essentially pick out only the best opportunities available for us, or the fastest appreciation within a relatively short period of time. And then those are the stocks that will, once again, 5x, 10x, and do so within a relatively short period of time. So that's our bread and butter, so to speak. With that in mind, let's concentrate on today's stock, which is Centene Corporation, CNC. We'll get back to that stock there in a second, but let me just very briefly mention what a fast mover is, okay? So let me open this chart. So once again, fast movers are stocks that are expected to appreciate quite significantly and do so within a relatively short period of time. So the chart you see here, by the way, if you're already familiar with our work and you want to skip towards the actual analysis, please skip forward probably 2 to 3 minutes, and you're going to be in the midst of that analysis. So what you see here on top and the bottom is what we call cycle composites. And this is a very simplistic very simplistic representation of a very complex mathematical concept. So what we do, we scan the chart back in three-dimensional space, and then we identify these cycle composites and we project them into the future. What makes matter a little bit more complicated is that there are typically multiple composites running for the bottom cycles and multiple composites running for the upper cycles. For example, I use Dow Jones always. Dow Jones has 2 lower composites and 2 higher composites. But when we combine them together, we can essentially replicate what you see here on a 2-dimensional time and price chart. So we can replicate the chart if we do it properly. Okay. With that in mind, here's what we found out over the years, is that we found that when there is a short period of time between a major cycle top and a major cycle bottom, it is then at that time typically when a fast move occurs. And of course the same applies when there's a major cycle bottom to a major cycle top. There's also potential to increase quite substantially going forward. Okay? So as you can see here, this is the chart for crude light. Okay? As you can see here, we had a major cycle top right here in early 2008, and then the commodity collapses quite substantially within a relatively short period of time. I believe it was 8 months, but you can see the move itself. And it collapsed right into this major cycle bottom. And more recently, this was the COVID bottom here on oil, and then it surged higher into this mid-cycle top. The chart needs to be adjusted a little bit, but it's an old chart that we haven't worked on in a long time. But anyway, so basically, it doesn't happen always. I would say it happens typically approximately between 50 to 75% of the time. So let's call it 65% of the time. But when you are doing the analysis of the stock and you are aware of this particular situation, very often there is going to be a significant move. That's when typically crashes happen if we consider the stock market overall composition of the stock market or individual stocks. That's when we have major moves down. But when we see this kind of a setup, we know very well to concentrate it, because then we can come in with our mathematical work and confirm whether or not there's going to be significant move, for example, as in the case here, to the downside. Okay, so let's look at CNC and see what it says. We're a little behind the schedule on this one. It recently popped up. We didn't pop up before. I don't know why, but nevertheless, we are still in consideration for technical entry because this particular bottom right here was most likely the bottom. I'll talk about that in a second. And then we're projecting a significant move higher. So this was the mid-cycle bottom that extended a little bit, and that coincides with this bottom that we had in August of this year. And then subsequently, the stock is expected to increase into this major cycle top that is scheduled for February of 2026. So approximately a 5 to 6 month period of time between these 2 points. And we expect the stock to appreciate quite significantly. So the bottom is most likely in. The stock increased quite substantially, I would add, but from I think $25 to $35 approximately. But now it represents a pretty good technical entry point on the long side if you want to play this game. And of course, we have this massive gap lower here that needs to be closed. By the way, I didn't mention these lines or these cycles. Let me just very briefly do so. Once again, it's a very simplistic representation, very complex mathematical concept. We scan the chart back in three-dimensional space once again, but this time around we use our proprietary cycles that we've developed over the years, and then we identify them on the chart and we project them into the future. So what we found over the years is that individual stocks typically top or bottom, not when any particular individual cycle arrives, but when there's a cluster of cycles arriving at the same time. So if we have 2, 5, 10 cycles arriving at the same time, the more the better. The longer term they are, the better. I typically use March of 2009 on the Dow Jones or the overall stock market as an example. At that time, around March 6th, we had 15 long-term cycles arriving at the same time. So if you're familiar with how this concept works, you could very well ascertain that at that juncture there's going to be a very important turning point for the market, and of course there was. So these composites or composites get us into the neighborhood of the actual move, and these cycle clusters get us the exact date of when an important turning point is going to happen. So going back to the analysis of CNC, we believe the bottom is in. Our calculations or our software confirmed that the bottom is in, and now the stock is increasing into this February of 2026 top, major cycle top, which will likely extend into either March or April of 2026 because we had the time extension here on the bottom, so we have to take that into consideration. So the question becomes, how far can the stock go? Let me give you a different representation of the same concept. So what you see here, I'm sure it doesn't make any sense to you. It makes perfect sense to us. This is yet another three-dimensional representation of our mathematical work. And as you can see here, the stock bottom exactly inside one of our green regions, which means it's mathematically precise, and the bottom exactly where it's supposed to bottom, okay? So, by the way, all we have to do is do this in order to calculate in three-dimensional space and then make those projections. But here, where it gets very interesting. So the question becomes, okay, the bottom is in, what's going to happen next? Let me show you, because we can very easily calculate how far the stock is going to go higher. So all we have to do this, and that's the output that we get. So there are two possibilities. The stock is either going to top here at approximately $70 a share, which is very likely by the time that time turning point of March, April, possibly as early as February arrives. But more likely probability is the stock is going to extend into this area because it's very easy to break above this level. And we'll know, of course, by the time that the upside turning point arrives, we'll know if we're sitting at this level, we will know that this is the top. But if we've broken above it at well before that, then we know that it's going to go higher to approximately $140 a share. But either way, it offers at least 100% return on investment within a relatively short period of time of less than 6 months, particularly if you took a position here at the bottom. But that's the power and that's the beauty of it. We're able to calculate once again. Once we know the bottom, once the bottom is confirmed, as is the case here, we know where it's going to go going forward into the future, in the future, okay, in both time and price. Let me go back to the previous chart I was showing you, and we'll conclude the call there. So basically, the bottom is in, and we're increasing into the top once again, and we missed the exact bottom. Having said that, this stock likely offers a very good technical entry point on the long side, and we talk about that in our subscription service. I'm not going to get into details here, as I don't want to give financial advice in the free forum, but free forum. But basically, what we have is we have a 30-day free trial associated with our service, no credit cards, no strings attached, none of that. So if you would be interested in that, I highly encourage you to sign up. You get the analysis for the overall markets. You get 52 mega cap stocks that we update twice a year. You get fast movers, you get super equities, you get trading parameters, just a wealth of information out there. So if you would be interested in seeing exact top bottom projections as well as time and price projections, please request a free trial. The link is in the description of this video. We also have a webinar coming up next Friday, October 31st at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. We talk about the overall stock market, which we rarely do because that's our bread and butter. We don't want to give that information away. We also showcase our software, and we show you how we calculate the market in three-dimensional space. So if that would be of interest, I definitely encourage you to check it out as well. I think that's it. Thank you very much for your time. We'll be back with another analysis tomorrow. Bye-bye.